All right. Hey, guys. Welcome back to the Shmeet Team podcast. And today we have Omar Salem, who is working out of Ireland at a company called Field of Vision. He's the co-founder and the CEO. And welcome, Omar, and thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, awesome. For those who are listening, just tell us a little bit about your background, and if you've ever tinkered previously with businesses and startups, or was this the first company that you built?
Yeah. So I myself now, I'm 21 years old. I've just graduated university, aerospace engineering at Queen's University, Belfast.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Prior to that, I've just always been I've always been a massive engineering nerd or fan or whatever you want to call it. I spent most of my secondary school time doing different projects. The Irish BT Young Scientist competition, SciFest, or the F1 in schools, which is the world's largest STEM competition as well. So most of my time in secondary school, and also in university as well, with FSA, former student, things like that. So I spent a lot of time doing engineering projects as such, but I've never actually gone into a business venture, if you will, until this Field of Vision, what we're doing now, which actually started out as another project as well, just a technology project.
How do you transition from aerospace engineering to starting a company?
Yeah, it's a good question. So aerospace engineering for me, I didn't enjoy too much in university, and I think the course itself was quite grounded, if you forgive the pun. Which sounds ironic as an aerospace engineering degree. Aerospace engineering is, of course, a fantastic field of study. I mean, it's probably the most exciting field of study you can actually go into. But for me personally, I just found it a bit to follow this rule, follow that rule. Not much creativity in the course, not too much innovation in the course, and it was quite an impractical course as well. Whether that's the field's fault or my particular course's fault, I don't know. I don't want to offend anyone. Nonetheless, so just working along myself, I found the whole realm of product design at a smaller scale, software, hardware, firmware, etc., just a much more exciting, creative, and innovative sphere for myself to get into. So that's how I started messing around with different products, teaching myself the necessary skills, and then I'm eventually going into starting a company in this area.
I mean, I'm sure, obviously, I did electrical engineering as well, and I know, there's a lot of courses that you can say that kind of, translates into, anything other sort of engineering or, project that you're building in, the lot of skills that are transferable. So I'm sure, it kind of helped you to, anyway, get started at least. And then you said you did engineering projects, and then you kind of, started this Field of Vision as a project as well initially, and then it's become this company now. So, kind of talk us through how you found that problem and how you kind of got started to the project.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, it started out during lockdown. I think the first big one in March, and while doing nothing, I came across videos online of blind or visually impaired football fans or soccer fans trying to enjoy a live game, and they'd have a friend or family member explaining the game to them, either verbally or kind of in a touch-based sense by tracing the position of the ball on their hand while in the stadium, or creating some sort of model of the pitch on the kitchen table and moving their friend's hand around while they were watching on the TV, relaying the information in both an audio sense and a touch-based feel sense.
Yeah.
Thought this was really interesting. It struck me as a football fan myself, who was fortunate enough to have perfect vision. So I started reaching out to visually impaired people across the world on forums, making calls, etc., and just asked them, all right, are any of you football fans or any of you sports fans? Turns out, yes, there are a lot. Are any of you, is there a better way in which you could enjoy sports? A lot of them said yes. So it was just basically started out like that, and came around to just building a rough prototype in my bedroom, and then further on to that, getting my two co-founders on board, which I know well from school. We worked on F1 in schools together in the past, and we started to develop a proper business plan, try to get some funding on board through different grants, etc. And we've just been working on it since.
Tell us more about, like, I'm sure that the customer interviews must have been like a difficult challenge. Like, it's a difficult challenge anyway, but like trying to reach out and find people that, like, you know, specifically people you're targeting must have been difficult. Like, how did you conduct those like customer interviews?
It wasn't too hard, to be honest, and I don't think it is too hard of a thing. If you're making something that is going to get people to answer the phone or reply to your email, that's a good sign. If you're sending out emails and people aren't, or you know, you're making phone calls and people aren't interested in the rough concept of what you're doing, that's usually not a great indicator. We're fortunate enough that what we were developing was just a touch-based technology to enable visually impaired fans to enjoy live sports. Whenever a visually impaired person or a blind person would hear about this, they'd be very keen to get on the phone with us. Similar to stadiums and clubs as well, whether that be marketing managers, stadium managers, operation managers, accessibility officers, all really keen to chat to us and figure out what we're doing. Whether or not they want to use it or buy it is obviously the next challenge. But getting them on the phone or on a Zoom to have a chat is usually not the hardest thing in the world, and extremely useful as well.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I guess like if you're providing so much value to your like customers or like whoever people you're making the product for, like it just makes it a lot easier. That's a fair point. So you said you started building the prototype out of your bedroom. Like, how do you, like, first of all, like just for the people listening who don't know like, what exactly you're building, like if you can go over like, you know, like what your proposed solution is, and sort of like I'm just interested kind of like the interest from the engineering point of view, like how you got into like building the like first prototype, and you know, how are you scaling it now?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do at FOV is we replicate the entire, or to as much an extent as we can, the visual experience of a match into a haptic or touch-based sense. So the main thing we do is communicate ball position live. So there is a movable football on we're basically developing something the size of an iPad, roughly, although albeit slightly thicker, and portable, small, discrete. It has a movable ball on the top surface with a debossed pitch, so user can feel exactly where the ball is relative to where the ball is live on the pitch, essentially. There's also haptic vibration and rumble and buzz feedback to feel which team has possession, what they're doing with the ball, are they passing, shooting, scoring. The entire idea of the product is to allow users to feel the match with their own senses, whether that be the power of a shot, the strength of a tackle, the swerve of a free kick, all with their own senses rather than just having someone explain it to them. So yeah, in terms of starting it out, a lot of learning is the honest truth, right? And I think that's the most important thing for any founder. It helps if you have the skills to start off with, but I don't think it's necessary. Or you definitely need a foundation, but there's plenty to learn along the way. So I'm fortunate enough to have a 3D printer in my bedroom, along with, you know, plenty of spare electronic parts, circuit boards, whatever. So it was quite easy to actually start putting together initial prototypes, along with just ordering a few other parts here and there. And it's just iteration after iteration after iteration. Applying for initial grants at the start is extremely helpful, because it means you can obviously buy in better parts, buy more parts, iterate quicker. But it's definitely, it's not an easy process, but it's definitely an achievable process for anyone with a slight interest in hardware, or if they've been doing it in the past personally.
Definitely. And so you said you met your co-founders in school previously. So how do you convince them, and like, you know, to drop like whatever they're doing or kind of join you instead? And then, you know, how do you guys like complement each other?
Well, fortunately enough, they weren't doing an awful lot. University was closed, school was closed, life was closed. So they were more than happy to get started. I think the challenge is actually in any of these things is convincing people to stay on then when life gets a bit more interesting. So I think that's actually a larger challenge, and we were fortunate enough you'd worked together on projects in the past. We knew each other well. We knew each
Yeah.
other's strengths and weaknesses. So there wasn't much convincing to do at any stage, quite frankly, and even less convincing to keep ourselves together as a unit because we just have a good chemistry between the three of us.
Yeah.
Which we're really fortunate to have, because I know that's not always a given, and I know friends who are trying to start their own companies at the moment, and they're trying to look for
Yeah.
co-founders online or strangers, and it's not something I'd want to do personally, that's for sure.
Yeah. I think, something that you'd not want to do. And also, I think, we just prefer, like, if you have, like, co-founders that you know for a longer time that you've worked on previous projects with as well. So, are all of your co-founders, so you have, like, 3 co-founders now, right, including you?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Are you all engineers, or are you, like, one person? So, because I guess, like, pitching and, like, all the business side is very intensive now as well for you guys as you're scaling. So, have you guys, like, allocated different work for different people, or how's it working right now?
Yeah, of course. So we've all got a technical background.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, we have David, our co-founder, who's much more so on the business side of things. But we all wear different hats. I think that's a given at a startup, until quite a high level. I think until quite an advanced level. Everyone pitches in, does this and that and the other. And that's just how it has to happen.
How's the, like, startup community in Ireland? I'm curious about that. Like, do you think you've seen, like, a lot of support coming in from, like, other co-founders or, like, other startup founders you're working, or is it, like, growing right now, or how's it been?
Yeah, it is quite a strong community. A lot of exciting things happening in Ireland at the moment, especially in Dublin and also in Belfast as well, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting to see how different cities have different focuses almost. I mean, quite personally, I can only speak for Belfast and Dublin. In Dublin, or in the Republic of Ireland, perhaps, there will be a lot of medtech startups, financial tech startups, ed tech startups.
Yeah.
And we're lucky enough to be based or be working out of Dogpatch Labs in Dublin, which is, I guess, a co-working startup hub.
Yeah.
It's probably the epicenter of startups in Dublin. In Belfast, however, you'll get much more hardware companies, actually, or much more companies working on, I guess, physical products. There's a much more established manufacturing sector up there.
Okay.
In Northern Ireland, or in Belfast in particular. So that's quite interesting to see how different environments can actually create different types of startup.
So why there's so many, like you said, medtech and, like, fintech startups out of, like, Dublin?
I'm not sure. There are a lot of the larger companies working in
sure.
Dublin. A lot of we have Google, Facebook, everyone, TikTok, a lot of large medical companies as well. I can't name them off the top of my head, and a lot of finance companies as well, as you'd expect from a large European capital city. So I guess it makes sense for such a place to attract companies who will then market to those larger companies or work, in tandem with those larger companies. And of course, then you'll also get a lot of, ex-employees from those companies who then, go on their own path, take the risk in their area of expertise, I suppose.
Have you been, like, trying to, like, poach employees from other companies, or are you, like, focus on just keeping the 3 of you for right now and, focus on just building the product? Or are you actually expanding the team as well?
Yeah, we're just the 3 at the moment, and we will stay like that for quite a while, I think.
Awesome. That's amazing. So you guys, like, really minimizing your resources.
Yeah, exactly. There's no need to hire until you're not sleeping, I think, personally. There are some stages where we do get to that, but I think overall we have a good balance of expertise across the team, and it's not necessary to hire just yet.
Awesome. So getting back to actually like the distribution, how are you reaching out to clubs, like football, soccer clubs to convince them? You said like, I guess a lot of them, they already like would be working from word of mouth as well. They see one club using it, and then obviously like a lot of other clubs want to use it as well. So but initially, how do you kind of like start reaching out to these clubs and show them like, hey, like it's a device we're building, and this is what the customers think, they actually find value in it, and how do you convince them to like buy it?
Yeah, so we have really two quite useful avenues. The first is just always the cold email or the cold LinkedIn message. You'll never you can never underestimate the power of that. And the second one, of course, is that we're quite lucky to have gotten a very useful, very well connected advisor on board who has been a CEO at top sports organizations his entire career, and he knows anyone and everyone, and he's extremely useful in getting connections to us. So if you start out as outsiders like ourselves, I think getting someone like that on your side is quite a useful thing to accomplish, and that'll be really helpful in opening doors down the road.
And did the advisor reach out to you, or was there advice also through cold email?
So we met him through an accelerator program, and we owed each other nothing. He just kind of was a mentor, along with a few others, and he was also responsible for mentoring a few other of the startups. But the relationship just developed from there. We both liked each other. We both saw how we could help each other out. He saw how we could add quite a lot of value to our company, perhaps more so than others who may have been more advanced than us and may not have needed his help, or perhaps he felt that he could not add too much value to what they were doing. However, he saw, we saw the value in working together continuously after the program. So that's how that happens.
I'm curious to know why you aren't selling it individually to people, like to the users, rather than going through the more like selling it to clubs who will then give it to their audiences.
So a couple of reasons for that. First of all is just the ease of marketing and communicating in a B2B style rather than a B2C style. The majority of startups, I can't give you a percentage, are geared as a B2B startup to begin with anyway, and that's for a good reason. Much easier to market. The units produced do not have to... The volume of production is lower, and the spending power of stadiums and clubs, etc., is much higher.
For sure.
In terms, so it makes sense. So when we approach stadiums, there's a few clear incentives for a stadium to get involved with us. First of all, being just doing the right thing, right?
Definitely.
Allowing improving the experience for your visually impaired fans. It's worth mentioning that in the UK, a large Premier League club would have 20 to 50 visually impaired or blind football fans regularly attending games at a limited capacity, of course. So our plan is, of course, to sell to businesses or to clubs and stadiums for the first couple of years of our operation, and then once we have been working at that for long enough to expand into the consumer market.
Okay. Tell me about how so you started first building the prototype in your bit, how different that is to now the units that you're manufacturing right now. Are you have you already started manufacturing it at scale, or what is going on right now in field of vision?
Yeah, so we are still at a gray zone between prototypes and small rate production. Quite an interesting zone where things are still being manufactured are still being assembled at the very least in our homes, rooms, spare rooms. We don't have garages here in Ireland like we may do in America, so it always reminds me of that meme where it's like Bill Gates started this in his garage. It started Facebook in the garage. Apple started in the garage. What's your excuse? I don't have a garage, right? So we're still assembling things at home, and but ordering parts kind of professionally SLS produced
Yeah.
kind of plastic parts, circuit boards manufactured from China, etc., and assembling at home. It's I think one thing I would really recommend to anyone going kind of from hobbyist style, kind of putting things together to putting things together that people are actually going to use and that need to be reliable, especially with tolerances, etc. To really take a course or at least do a lot of reading up on just appropriate manufacturing techniques, design for manufacture, design for assembly, making sure you have the correct tools available, and whenever you can't do something, make sure that's outsourced appropriately. Otherwise, you will be permanently left with unprofessional hobby level products. It's always recommended to actually just get someone to fully outsource your manufacturing, because that manufacturer will always be able to do it better than you. And we're quite in between that. We let other people manufacture it, we just do the assembling.
Okay. And it's just still like just the three of you just doing all this assembling as well right now?
Just me.
Oh, just you? Wow.
Yeah.
How much does it cost per per one each device right now to manufacture, like completely manufacture and assemble it and everything, to put it together?
It fluctuates greatly at this low level. Fluctuates greatly with the availability of electronic components, which is quite surprising.
Yeah.
But I would say between 500 and 900 euro at very low rate production, which is what we're doing at the moment, which could be like 1 or 2 a week, and only upon request.
Okay. And has the global supply chain issues affected your business as well? At any point?
Absolutely. They haven't put us off track. They've just made us have to pay more, which is annoying, because when you find the perfect part at the website and it says, okay, this won't be ready for 37 years, you think, okay, what the hell? So you just have to find it somewhere else for more expensive, or take a risk on eBay or Alibaba or something, rather than the trusted sites. But it's definitely a problem, and it's probably going to continue to be a problem going forward, especially when we do scale and are manufacturing a much larger amounts of products. So I think that problem will scale as we scale, and it'll be interesting to see how we get around it.
Awesome. That's actually really interesting. I find it really cool that you said you're still assembling it on your own, because I think a lot of people like from the outside like look at shops, especially like cool shops like this, and be like, okay, like it's all like just business meetings and stuff, but like the founder still has to keep doing that work until a very long time. But especially for you guys, like instead of like hiring people and spending your resources, you're still like being as scrappy as possible and having that founder mentality. So that's cool. Pretty inspirational, actually. So having said that, what has been the biggest challenge for you so far in the company from like your day one to now? And you can like say there's no constraints. So what do you think is the biggest challenge so far?
Biggest challenge so far has just been getting the product to work, or building the product. Quite frankly, it's wasn't an easy product to build. Product's been built, kind of the concept we're working on has been done before, but at a much larger scale. Like I'm talking about, imagine a product the size of your, gosh, I can't even think. Very big products, right? Probably the size of your...
How big is your current product, like in inches, like a screen? Is it like...
Well... I'm from Europe. I do metric.
I kind of like grew up doing metric, but after moving to the US, I kind of switched.
I've got a ruler here, so let me see. So 25 centimeters will be no, it's not 20 centimeters will be 8 inches. So about 8 to 10 inches long, and corresponding ratio wide, probably 6 or 7 wide in inches. Yeah, so basically,
pretty good,
so the idea of our product is to have it as small, comfortable, lightweight, portable as possible. Other companies have developed the tech in the past, and they've had it wired without batteries, and much larger, to the point where previous stadium. Our competitors have tried to go into stadiums and
Yeah.
get them to use the tech, and they'd say no because it literally wouldn't fit in their stadium, or they had no room for
Yeah.
people to use it. Furthermore, the fans themselves don't want to stand out too much using a massive product. They want to blend in. They would still want to chill, stand up, sit down, do whatever they want in the crowd, sit wherever they want. And most importantly, so that's the key value in our product. And so the challenge in compressing the kind of the motion technology and the haptic technology down to that level, while also making sure that it could cover a whole match in terms of battery power, that was definitely the biggest challenge.
Yeah. So yeah, your product is definitely seems like 10x better than what the previous solution was, and hopefully this get adopted more. Is it easy now though? Because now you have a blueprint of what you need to build, right? And so you just have to keep repeating it again, or is it there's some nuances, or do you have to still keep iterating the product?
Yeah, technologically we're in a good position now.
Yeah.
Of course, we're continuously iterating, changing this, changing that quite often. But we're definitely in a better position. It's also easier for us now that college or university is over, so we can dedicate full time to this.
And was there have you reached out to the company that was previously working something similar to this, for their blueprint technologically, or their advice or something?
Funnily enough, no. But funnily enough, it actually came up with one of my co-founders quite recently that we should do that.
Yeah.
Not to ask for technological help.
Yeah, because you guys are better than that, right?
But, well, we're not going to say that. I'm sure they have their own competencies. We have our own competencies. One other key competency we have is that we have an entire artificial intelligence model that can process the match from camera feeds in less than half a second, using on-edge computers, and then communicate all that information to the haptic device. That's another core competency we have that others may not. But yeah, definitely would be interested to speak to them, get ideas from them.
Yeah.
How receptive they'd be is something we can see. But it's not something I've actually considered personally before my co-founder or even yourself suggested it, and I'm not sure how often it is done. If you know that, I'd be interested to hear, but it's definitely worth doing.
I think, from the people I've talked to, I think if a company either just obviously, especially if it's hasn't been successful, then I think it's interesting to learn from them why it wasn't successful at that time. It might be more than just I think more than just the device being big enough or something like that. And people now want to stand out. There might be something else which you can kind of avoid if you get to learn about it before, and you don't have to repeat that mistake again that they did. So. But it's true. It depends on how receptive they are, how kind they are, and if they don't want to speak, and then there's nothing much you can do. But
I'm sure there's plenty to be learned, so it is worth doing.
What is the long-term vision for you as the co-founder of Field of Vision? Do you think you're gonna venture into probably other areas and helping other people as well? And maybe perhaps different sports, or are you just locked down focused on soccer? And what's the long-term plan? I think for the company.
Yeah, we're definitely expanding into different sports. We're actually starting that already. I can't reveal just as of yet what other sports or areas we're working into, but we've actually got some quite exciting deals coming through for us in different sports, which is pretty exciting. It's funny though, because our logo still has a soccer ball on it, so I don't know if that was an oversight on our part or not.
It's still
other sports
though, with soccer ball. So
that's true. That is true. So other sports is the first thing to expand into, which is presently happening much earlier than expected, I'll admit. And the second thing is the consumer product. Right, we want this in every single blind football fan's home. Only so many go to stadiums. It's an easier inroad, but it's not the market opportunity. The market opportunity is the home device, the consumer device. Once we develop the expertise, the trust from the people using it in stadiums, etc., that is the end goal. With the technology we develop, there is always the opportunity or the possibility that it could be used for other things other than sports as a whole, or that be video games, education, other forms of communication. That remains to be seen, and that's something we'll learn ourselves as the years go on. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we end up doing. over time. But the vision is, for the time being, a product in every single visually impaired football fans or sports fans' home,
Yeah.
and to create a much more visually impaired sports fans, or help visually impaired sports fans who were sports fans lost interest when they lost their vision, and now we can bring them back to it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I kind of like, I was curious about, and was going to ask you about like how flexible your technology is to, like be able to like expand to like different fields as well for like in order to help visually impaired people. And also most of these fans that you've like talked to or like interviewed so far for your like, for a company, so I'm guessing most of them were fans before and then they became visually impaired and, they kind of like missed that. But I'm guessing like it's also like people who want to probably get into the sports because they've heard people and their family talk so much about it and they kind of want to like feel the experience as well. Have you seen those people as well? Or?
Those people we've spoken to are fans, to varying degrees. The majority of blind or visually impaired people, out of a whole population, were not born that way. They lost their sight over time, whether that be through some degenerative disease or an accident. It is quite rare to be born blind. So they're a majority of fans. Those who would have been interested, who would have watched matches, whether that be on TV or gone to the stadium, gone to the arena every week. And then perhaps they weren't able to anymore. A lot of stadiums at the moment are offering audio descriptive commentary, which is the best solution out there, which is just the more detailed commentary than what you'd get on the TV or the radio. It has a lot of drawbacks, but that is the best solution. So a lot of fans are still coming to stadiums, which is fantastic. So for the time being, most of our users already exist. We don't have to convince too many to start coming along. We're just going to improve the experience for them. But there are plenty who have lost interest or just don't think going to stadium is worth it. So we're going to change that as well.
So it's exciting. So how does it, one thing I'm curious about is like, how does it work when they're tracking? Are they tracking like the players or the ball, and like are they tracking like both the teams, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the ball is the main thing that's tracked. Position of the ball live in a high resolution as well. That's something that can never really be communicated through commentary. That's just something that has to be seen with your own eyes, or in our case now felt, just with one finger. Further to that, our aim is about entertainment as opposed to information. When you go to watch a match yourself, if you're sighted, it's all about entertainment, and it's about the psychological kind of subconscious cues that happen in your brain. So over time you can tell which team is playing better by whether they have the possession more or not. Imagine if there's and you've got a positive feeling about that, and that's something you just feel yourself. That's not something that a commentator will tell to you. So we're communicating team possession in order to give that sense. Imagine if there's a player sends a through pass, sends a through ball kind of over the top of the defense, and there's two opposing players are running towards it. The blue player, which you support, on the red player, who's your opposition. In your head, you're subconsciously wanting to see the blue blob on your screen reach the ball first. That's what you're looking for, and then when that happens, there's a small subconscious dopamine release or something which makes you go, yes, come on, the blue guy's got it, fantastic. So you replicate the same through vibration. So you can feel different vibrations in your left hand or your right hand depending on which team has the ball. So you'll see that the ball has been passed, and you'll know it's been passed due to the specific vibration that's happened, and then you'll be waiting for it to vibrate in your left hand, which means that your team has kept onto the ball. And then when you feel that vibration, it sends the same dopamine release as if you're watching with your own eyes. So that was a long-winded explanation, I guess, but that's the idea that we work on. So it's ball position, shots and passes, touches of the ball, receiving the ball. That's communicated through vibration, and that vibration can either happen in your left or right hand or your lap, depending on how you're holding it. depending on which team is actually doing the action.
And then, so suppose someone's taking a free kick, is like, so the stop balls as well, like dead balls are also can be detected and stuff. Like, someone's taking a free kick and shooting in, and like, would that be able to like be felt as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that we currently don't have a way to communicate if the ball is, I guess, dead, so to speak. It'll still be, it'll still move in the same way. That context can be inferred either through someone listening to commentary at the same time while using field advice, or just getting used to how it works over time. They hear the referee's whistle, of course, so they know the ball's out of play. They'll hear the referee's whistle again, which means it's going back into play.
Yeah, I think it's super cool that he said that dopamine thing. I think it's like the thrill that people get by watching the game, by seeing who wins their 50-50 balls, and like those things obviously aren't translating in commentary because they're happening in real time. It's very difficult to like translate that as a commentator, and I think like this is them getting like live, like real time play to play thrill. That's super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about showing, not telling. It's a commonly used phrase, but again, it exists for a reason.
Yeah, and I think it's like a whole different, like, I think an experience for them. It's like something really fun. That's really interesting that he said that it's supposed to be for entertainment as well, and that's like the main thing, and not just much for information. So it's not like they're trying to like learn something or become like a nerd about the game. They want to like actually have the fun. Like that's what sports is for, right? Like you want to like actually have fun while like doing it, and you don't want to just hear like, oh, like Salah gets the ball, or like Firmino scores. Like you want to see like, oh, he dribbles past 3 players and goes off, and you want to feel that as well. And that's super interesting what you brought up. Because initially what I thought it would be something more like just kind of telling the fans, and I was just trying to like figure out how they would really like get a value over the season, because it might get boring for them at one point, like okay, just like kind of like feeling like, okay, where's the pass going? But that's super interesting. So obviously like hardware startups are hard, and I think like you kind of like went over this before, but like if you can give like advice to people like around your age or our age, like I graduated just now from engineering as well, and you said you just graduated at 21. What would be like your approach if you had like what advice would you give to people who have kind of like identified a problem like you did, and they feel like a hardware solution is the best suited for it? And how should they go about like validating the product, ideating it, and kind of like building the first prototype?
Yeah, I think a lot of the advice will, I guess, translate to software startups as well. Or a lot of the advice that you may hear about startups is probably geared to software startups, and you may think, oh, this isn't relevant to me. It probably is, right? And this is a mistake I definitely made. If you're a hardware engineer, I will assume that you are a perfectionist to some degree. You want everything to be perfect, right? That's just how our brains are wired for the most part, if I'm generalizing. And so you will see every product in your room, in your office, and in the street, right? And you'll see how perfectly formed it is, using the best materials, the best design. Everything's put together perfectly, etc., etc. That takes a lot of work to do, right? That wasn't done overnight, but you need to iterate your product overnight if you're going to get anywhere. You need to be making prototype after prototype after prototype, and you need to be presenting those prototypes to users and to investors, customers, etc. And I think when people are, I don't know who says it. It could be Paul Graham who says it. Please correct me if I'm wrong. If you are proud of or if you're not ashamed of the kind of product you've launched too late, right?
I think that is something like if your first product is perfect, then you're already too late or something like that. Yeah.
But I think that's very easy to do in
software stuff.
In kind of websites and software, you can, if you have a bad looking website or software, it's probably just not nice colors or not nice fonts, or you didn't think that much into user experience, right? But if you have a messy physical product, it probably looks like something that wouldn't get past airport security. You know, it's just a messy kind of case with wires sticking out and batteries and everything. And you'll kind of think then, okay, well, this is awful. I can't show this to anyone. I need to make it good. I need to make it better. I need to make it better. And you spend loads of time, wasting time. Like, we did that. So if anyone who knows me is listening to this and thinking, Omar, you're talking nonsense. You did all this. I did all this, right? So that's why I'm telling you not to do it. I spend way too much time focusing on getting a product to look good before showing it to people. And I probably spend more time focusing on the appearance of the outside of the product, the feel, the ergonomics, etc., rather than the actual core technology itself, which is stupid in hindsight, but that's just how I was. I didn't want to show some crappy box thing to anyone. I wanted to show the real deal to people. So try not to do that. As much as you want to do that, show your crappy box that works rather than your nice looking box that doesn't work. It sounds obvious, but it's not obvious, especially when you're in the thick of it trying to build something. So build quick, build cheap, stay away from 3D printing if you can. That's obviously always a temptation, but if you can use as much standard components as possible, even if it costs a bit more, do that. You'll thank me for saying that. And
I think the main issues about the building the crappy design industry and hardware is I think, as you said, it's just more evident, and especially for users, someone using it, it's just okay, they know how much longer it's going to take to just actually make it look good as well. 'Cause it's not like a website, you switch a few things, center a little bit of things, and just press update, and the website gets updated. But with the hardware, you have to really go through the iteration is just a lot harder in obviously in hardware companies, because you gotta change devices, or there's some wiring that's gone wrong. It's just a lot more expensive. So I think that's maybe a blockage for a lot of people that don't kind of want to start hardware stuff. So if they do, it just takes them so long to really show a project. That's good because of that.
Yeah, it is always a challenge. And another trap we would fall into sometimes as well is, during the prototyping stage, would have enough components bought in for a few devices. You'd build a prototype, it would work kind of or whatever, and then you'd say, okay, well, you're redesigning the CAD or whatever, a whole new one, and you think, this is great, fantastic, I'm going to make this, and so you fully take apart what you've already built, scavenged all the components to make the new one, and maybe the new one doesn't work, and then you're left with no working product. Or maybe it does work, but or maybe you're caught in an awkward moment where, some investor or customer is saying, okay, show me the product, and you say, okay, I can't because I had it last week, but I don't have it this week because I took the whole thing apart to make the new one. So that is a trap we've fallen into a few times as well. And
I guess documenting,
the workaround is... Yeah, documenting is good. I think one thing that really needs to be done, and if it exists, I might be embarrassing myself here, but just some kind of proper versioning control discipline for mechanical or hardware development. That's something you should be trying to implement yourself, or using some existing software. I don't know if it exists. But that's something that needs to be done, and just discipline around that whole thing.
If there's no product that exists that is pretty good, then that's another opportunity for someone to build it. Thanks for that. That's pretty detailed and pretty true as well, actually. Kind of trying to wrap up soon, but I just questions what do you first do when you're stuck in just a field of vision, but also generally in any project that you're working on? So if you're stuck in a technological problem, or in terms of operations or finances of the company, or any problem that you're kind of stuck in, what's usually your way of solving it?
I'm trying to think to my last thing I was stuck on. I don't know if I have a go-to strategy or if it's different each time. It depends. A lot of times things can be solved by talking. yeah, it's talking with your co-founders, talking with your mentors, advisors. A problem in your head may not be as big as it seems, or the solution might just be obvious and that is something you've missed.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, if you're found yourself stuck on something, it's probably something easy that maybe you've just reached capacity for that day. You need to take a few just to relax, and just come back at it, a couple hours later, a couple of days later. Or so you just need a fresh mind to look at it or whatever. That's most problems can be solved that way. I don't think we've had any massive problems that we've needed, external help for, or any disasters. Every problem we've had, we've been able to just solve by talking it out, waiting a while, going back at it, taking a different angle, etc.
Yeah. I think that's like Steve Jobs says, well, it's kind of like Connie, but he says that, like they should ask for help, and like, most people will be like willing to help as well. So, I think that's important to just kind of like talk and ask people out, because, again, it's like, instead of like wasting your time and being like stuck in a deadlock, you're better off like kind of asking someone who's probably, expert in the field, but also like just someone from a different point of view kind of like comes in and, it's like you're seeing something, from like a more biased point of view, and they might give it like a different angle and solve the problem. So
absolutely,
that's pretty interesting. I'm sort of like done for my end. Appreciate the time. Do you have anything else that you want to like say before we end?
No, I'm happy enough. Thanks again for having me.
Oh yeah, obviously. I think it was super cool. And it's like super inspiring that you're working on this. Like for me, someone who did, electrical engineering, but also someone who's like a huge soccer fan, and I think what you're building is like solving a real world problem, and it seems challenging, but like it's like the way you're building and the way you're approaching it, it's super inspiring as well. So like I really wish you luck, and thank you so much for.
No, that means a lot.
Yeah,
thank you.